The men's 200 meters just delivered one of the craziest storylines of the season, and it did not even come from the final. Sinesipho Dambile ran a semifinal so relaxed, so effortless. People compared it to peak Usain Bolt jogging to the finish line. Everyone believed history was about to happen. What actually happened next is the part nobody saw coming. The Commonwealth Games in Glasgow have been full of fast times this year. Track fans have already watched records fall in events you would never expect during a non-championship season. But nothing grabbed attention like the men's 200-meter semifinals. 3 heats went off, and each one raised the bar higher than the last. In the first heat, Jamaica's Christopher Taylor won in 2020. In the second heat, Ghana's Joseph Amoah edged out Javon Powell by a whisker, both clocking 2024, with Botswana's Prince Selepi rounding out that group in 2031. Strong times, good races. But then came Heat 3, and this is where things got wild. South Africa's Sinesipho Dambile lined up next to Canada's Aaron Brown, Australia's Lachlan Kennedy, and a stacked field of proven sprinters, including Nigeria's own 200-meter talent in the mix. This was the group everyone circled on the schedule before the night even started. For the first 100 meters, the race looked normal. Kennedy shot out fast on the outside. Dambile stayed right on his shoulder, tracking him step for step. Nothing unusual yet. Then the second half of the race happened, and it looked like a different sport. Dambile pulled away from a world-class field, like they were standing still. His finishing time, 19.82 seconds. That is just 0.02 of a second off the Commonwealth record. Behind him, Aaron Brown still ran a strong 19.90, and Lachlan Kennedy grabbed the last automatic qualifying spot in 20.12. Those are excellent times by any normal measure. They just were not close to what Dambile put down. Here is what made it scary. Dambile's opening 100 meters was 10.29. Solid, but nothing special for this level. His second 100 meters was 9.53. Run that number through your head again. 9.53 seconds for the second half of a 200-meter race, and he did it looking completely comfortable. Not straining, not fighting the track, just gliding. To put that in perspective, that closing speed matched pace with some of the fastest closers on the planet from the year before. And Dambile did it while barely appearing to push. After the race, he even admitted he was not trying to run that fast. He said all he wanted was to secure his spot in the final, stay comfortable, and that the time itself was just a bonus. Then he added one more line that got everyone's attention. He said he still had a lot left in the tank. People online started comparing it to Usain Bolt jogging through a semifinal at his peak, easing off the gas with 20 meters to go and still blowing the field away. That comparison was not an exaggeration. Watch the replay and you will see a runner who looks like he still has another gear he never used. Look at his body language in that race again. His shoulders stayed loose. His stride never looked rushed. There was no sign of him fighting for that time, which is usually the biggest giveaway that a sprinter is nowhere near their ceiling. Elite sprinters who are maxed out tend to show it in their face and their arms. Dambile showed neither. So naturally, everyone started asking the same question. If that was Dambile at maybe 80% effort, and he is saying himself he had more in reserve, what happens when he actually opens it up in the final? Predictions started flying. Some said he was ready to dip under 19.7. Others pointed to his blistering 150-meter time from earlier in the season, just 11 hundredths behind Noah Lyles' world record run, and said a sub 19.6 was realistic if the wind cooperated. The hype was real, and it was building fast heading into the final at Scotstoun Stadium. Now here is where the story takes a turn nobody scripted. The final happened, and Dambile did win gold. His first major global title, but the time on the clock was 1996. Slower than his semifinal. Slower than almost every prediction floating around. No sub 19.6, not even a run at his own semifinal mark. So what happened? Dambile explained it himself afterward. On the curve, conditions were tricky, and he had to fight to stay relaxed and controlled through the bend. Instead of chasing a fast time, he focused purely on execution and closing the gap when it mattered. In his own words, "It was never about the time. It was about winning the title," and that is exactly what he did. And credit where it's due, winning was not easy. Nigeria's Udodi Onwuzurike made him work all the way to the line, crossing in 20:09 for a season best and grabbing silver. For Onwuzurike, that medal means everything. He first turned heads back in 2021 as the first Nigerian man to win the 200 meters at the World Under-20 Championships, but injuries and brutal competition kept delaying his breakthrough on the senior stage. This podium finish is now the biggest medal of his career. Jamaica's Christopher Taylor snatched bronze in a personal best 20.11, edging out Canada's Aaron Brown, who finished fourth in 2018. Lachlan Kennedy, who had been one of the favorites after his run in the 100 meters, could only manage sixth. Dambile himself later admitted the bend was the hardest part of the race. He said staying relaxed through the curve took real effort, and that getting the job done mattered more than chasing a number on the clock. Dambile's win carries extra weight beyond just his own achievement. It marked South Africa's first ever Commonwealth Games title in the men's 200 meters. It was also South Africa's first sprint gold at these games, since Akani Simbine won the 100 meters back in 2018. That is not a small footnote. That is history. So here is the real lesson in all of this. A blistering semifinal time gets everyone talking, but championship racing is a completely different puzzle. The fastest man on paper does not always win. The man who executes when it counts does. Dambile proved that a title does not need a record time attached to it. Sometimes the smartest race is the one where you control the controllable and let the clock take care of itself. Think about what he was actually managing that night. A stacked final field, a tricky bend, the weight of chasing his country's first ever gold in this event, and a crowd expecting fireworks after that semifinal. Under that kind of pressure, plenty of sprinters tighten up and fall apart entirely. Dambile did the opposite. He slowed his approach down mentally, focused on the fundamentals, and let the result take care of itself. That kind of composure is rare, and it is usually what separates good sprinters from champions. It is also worth remembering where Dambile is coming from as an athlete. He runs during what is technically his off-season back home, since South Africa sits in the Southern Hemisphere and their competitive calendar flips compared to Europe.